the ability for anyone convicted of first-degree sex offense to receive diminution credits during their entire period of incarceration. Currently, inmates sentenced to prison in Maryland are entitled to earn diminution credits of confinement credits that reduce the length of their incarceration. Currently, inmates who may not receive such credits are those serving a sentence for first-degree or second-degree rape or sexual offense against a victim aged 16 years or younger. Also precluded currently are inmates who are serving a repeat sentence for a third-degree sex offense against a victim under the age of 16 and younger, and inmates in prison for lifetime sex offender supervision violation. And yet, still, Mr. Billingsley fell through the cracks and went on to allegedly commit unspeakable acts of violence. The Pava Marie LaPere Act will fill in those cracks so that no offender convicted of first-degree sex offense can earn diminution credits and be out on our streets early. This bill is first and foremost about public safety, which is always will be the priority of my administration. If we cannot keep the public safe from the most egregious violent offenders in our society, then we have failed as public servants. There can be no disagreement after seeing the tragedy that unfolded here in our city on September 22nd, 2023. This legislation is urgent and is vital to the state of Maryland. I also want to acknowledge the survivor of Mr. Billingsley's other alleged attacks, who are living with unimaginable trauma as well. I hope this bill is the first step in their healing journey. I now would like to introduce the person who's been a friend of mine, who's been a tireless advocate and fighter for victims, whether they were the Deputy State's Attorney, the Deputy Attorney General, or in the legislature. Now I'd like to introduce my friend, Delegate Elizabeth Embry.
Thank you so much. I just want to first say thank you to Pava's family and her incredible, loving network of friends who I've gotten to know a little bit through this process. I want to thank our state's attorney, a very old friend, for his championship of this issue and for fighting so hard to reduce violent crime in this city. I want to thank our mayor, who I've also known for a very long time and who is also dedicated to the public safety of Baltimore, and our councilman, Mark Conway, my colleague, who I am very lucky to work with. I just want to speak for a minute about the bill. The state's attorney has explained it, I think, really well. But I just want to focus on a few things. One, it's about discretion. It means that a person who has committed the most serious acts of sexual violence in our system, first-degree rape, first-degree sex offense, can only be released if the parole commission agrees. The parole commission, unlike the diminution credit process, the parole commission can hear from victims. The parole commission can hear from victims' families, from people who cared about the victim of the crime. The parole commission can consider the entirety of the person's record and history of violence. So what this bill says is if you are going to be released early, if you've committed these horrific acts, it cannot just be through the math of diminution credits. It means the parole commission has to approve it. I also want to say Chairman Will Smith, who's the chair of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, he's going to cross-file the bill, so we have incredible leadership in the Senate, so I just want to thank him and very excited that he's willing to do that. We also have a lot of co-sponsorship within the Baltimore City delegation and across the General Assembly, so I'm just grateful to my colleagues and want to thank them too. And with that, I want to turn it over to Baltimore's wonderful mayor, who has done so much, who has created a historic low in gun violence in Baltimore City, and I thank him for being here today.
Thank you, Delegate Embry. And the delegate is absolutely right. The delegate and I were staff members in a long ago office called the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice many, many moons ago. I want to thank the delegate for her leadership and the state's attorney for his leadership and for bringing us together this afternoon. And to Mr. Frank and the entire LaPere family, know that we all continue to feel Pava's loss. And as I said from the very beginning in our first conversation, we will be with you throughout this journey of healing, and will be with you whenever you need us as we continue to use Pava's memory to inspire all of us in Baltimore to be better. And I want to be very frank, Pava's unfortunate and tragic loss was avoidable. There is no reason for someone convicted of a first-degree sexual offense that they should be able to get out almost 5 years early, period, full stop. And we must fix our inadequate, broken diminution credit system that allow this to be possible. Allowing these individuals to serve just fractions of their sentences jeopardizes the safety of our communities, not just here in Baltimore City, but across this state of Maryland, which is why when I announced my priorities for this legislative session, I named reforming the diminution credits system as something that we were going to take head on. I'm glad to have wonderful partners in that work, led by the state's attorney and our delegate here, so that we can continue to do this work. Thankful to Delegate Embry's leadership. You all have all heard about the proposed legislation and how it would change the current system. And while the Justice Reinvestment Act of 2016 made some much-needed improvements to requirements and permissions under Maryland law, there are still certain crimes that should not allow for the same level of credits to be granted to those inmates. Although credits are important for allowing and incentivizing equitable rehabilitation of inmates serving time for lesser offenses, they should not be facilitating mandatory early release for anyone serving time for heinous crimes like rape and murder. This has to be changed. Again, I am grateful for the partnership today and look forward to being in Annapolis alongside our state's attorney, alongside our delegate, alongside Chairman Smith, and alongside Pava and her family to make sure that this bill is passed so that we're never talking about this again. Thank you, and with that, I'll turn it back over to the state's attorney.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge from my office, Jesse Halverson he leads our sex offense violent unit. I also like to acknowledge City Councilman Mark Conway, who's definitely been a partner. We've talked about this, cares so much about public safety, head this Public Safety Committee for City Council. Right now, I'd like to turn this over to a gentleman I had the pleasure of meeting, but unfortunately it was really tough situations when we met the first time in reference to his daughter passing, and that's why we're here. So Frank LaPere has been an advocate for his daughter, but one of the things I think really bound us when we talked is that we're both fathers of daughters. And I can never imagine the hurt that he's gone through. But one of the things when we talked, I wanted to make sure that he knew we were at my office and we would do everything we could to try to help his family in any way we can. At this moment in time, I'd like to call you up, sir. I just want to thank you for all that you're doing. Being here is you're strong. You continue to stand for your daughter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Attorney Bates and Delegate Embry, for inviting me to speak today. I greet you as the proud father of Pava Marie LaPere, my only daughter, and the latest victim of Jason Billingsley. However, Pava was not his only victim. Her grieving mother, Caroline, and her loving brother, Nico, are also victims. The first violent crime which has been stated, which he pled guilty for and was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison for, happened in 2015, and yet he was released early in October of 2022. In 2023, just 2 days before Pava was murdered, two others, as has been referenced, were violently attacked and were also made victim of this repeat offender. All of our extended families are victims. The employees of EcoMap Technologies, Pava's friends and co-workers, and other members of the Baltimore tech community ecosystem are victims. The entire city of Baltimore was held hostage, and as a result is also a victim. Mayor Scott, you stated emphatically on September 26th that there is no way in hell that he should have been on the street. And yet he had already violated parole, and he was still on the street. And Governor Moore has stated emphatically on multiple occasions that the system failed Pava. It's time to change that system. As Pava's father, I state again emphatically that no other victim should fall prey to repeat and violent criminals like this defendant. In some cases, diminution credits just aren't working. As you know, Pava was a 2019 graduate of Johns Hopkins University. While a student there, she started EcoMap Technologies in her dorm room. It now employs close to 30 Baltimoreans, with 50% people of color and 50% women, now leading the way in her absence. So Pava was already accomplishing her dream in her chosen, adopted city of Baltimore by helping others from historically underrepresented communities, including that of this defendant and his other victims. While this is a tragic, horrific loss which could have been prevented, Pava's vision and dreams are living on. We cannot allow the system that led to the injustice of his latest crimes continue. All of we the victims, thanks State's Attorney Bates and his like-minded cohorts of other state's attorneys throughout Maryland, such as Aisha Braveboy and Delegate Embry and other legislators, for now taking the necessary action, something Attorney Bates' predecessor chose not to do. Let the Pava Marie LaPere Act be a model for the entire country on how to represent and defend the innocent from repeat violent offenders. Good, thoughtful, loving people from all sides of the political spectrum can do amazing things if we work together for the common good. And while I am heartbroken, I'm also very, very hopeful. So do me a favor. When you pass someone on the street, look them in the eye and smile. If you're in a position to help someone in need, please take that little extra effort to do so. You have no idea how that small gesture may affect someone's life. As her father, I appeal to you, her adopted city and state, to do the same. Because no mother should ever have to nurse her child back to health after he was violently assaulted as an innocent bystander. And no sibling should lose his most trusted confidant and best friend in the primes of their lives. And a father should kiss his daughter goodnight and not try to cry himself to sleep through avoidable grief. Pava was recently selected as a member of the prestigious Forbes 30 Under 30 class of 2023. Her 27th birthday would have been this Sunday. Let us work together as a community and as a legislature and as a judicial system to ensure that Pava Marie LaPere is the very last victim of a convicted and repeat offender like Jason Dean Billingsley. And now I leave you as a grateful father, and I thank you on behalf of Pava's family and on behalf of her friends and on behalf of this community that she so loved, for your time. Thank you.
Okay.
Juliana.
I could introduce myself. Hello, and thank you everyone for coming today. It means a lot. My name is Juliana Bonanno. I am the CEO of a tech company here in Baltimore City. I wasn't aware of the issues around early release credits or related programs until it hit close to home. And my friend was gone. As a fellow female tech entrepreneur who is invested in Baltimore City and raising my daughter here, I want her to grow up in a safe place, a place where we all can grow and thrive. For our ecosystem to continue investing in Baltimore City and the larger Maryland ecosystem, our fundamental safety needs have to be met. I view the Pava Marie LaPere Act as one step toward a safer Maryland now and for future generations. Thank you. Corey? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corey Bailey. I'm the CEO of Upsurge Baltimore, a nonprofit organization that is building the ecosystem for tech sector growth in Baltimore and across the state of Maryland. I'm happy to report that the tech community in Baltimore is strong. It's incredibly resilient, and it's experiencing unprecedented momentum. Pava Marie LaPere was a beloved member of that community, and her work set the foundation for the growth that we are experiencing today and will continue to experience over the next decade. Pava was young, but was an old soul. I think it's safe to say that she also saw the future. She saw a world where we were all better connected, where access and opportunity aren't just available to a few, but are the standard for everyone. And she didn't just wish for that world. Pava worked to create it alongside her team at EcoMap, modeling herself after other leaders in our ecosystem, people like Delali Zarasa of Fearless, Ellington West of Sanavi Labs, Jess Gartner of Oliveview, and her dad, Frank LaPere. She was quickly becoming a rising star in the tech community. A community with an abundance of women leaders, many of whom are here with us today. Women who deserve our respect, our empathy, and our action. Legislation that recognizes the importance and the impact that women have on our economy and in our communities are worthy of our consideration. The Pava Marie LaPere Act and any other legislation that ensures that things like what happened to Pava never happen again are deserving of our support. At Upsurge, our vision is for Baltimore to be the first Equitech city in the world. Equitech is our aspiration to build a thriving tech economy anchored by diverse leadership, equitable systems and practices, and a culture of belonging in tech. We cannot achieve that vision without listening to the voices and following the leadership of the women in our community. I want to thank Juliana for her work. I want to thank the state's attorney and everyone that is supporting this legislation. And I want to thank Sherrod Davis, who you'll hear from, who has taken on the mantle of leadership at EcoMap and continued Pava's legacy. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Good afternoon. I'm Sherrod Davis. I'm one of the co-founders at EcoMap. Pava was a loving daughter, sister, and friend. She was also a brilliant technology CEO. She could have chosen to do anything, and she could have chosen to do it anywhere, but she chose to do it in Baltimore. She fell in love with its institutions, its architecture, its character, its charm, its people, this ecosystem. She loved this place, and she cared for it deeply. She invested so much into Baltimore and became a part of her identity. She wanted to shine a spotlight on all of the good, and she desperately wanted to fix all of the bad. She had a knack for solving problems, and all she ever wanted to do was help people. To become the city that we aspire to be, we need more Pavas. We need more Pavas to choose Baltimore like she did. She chose us, she chose Baltimore. I think it's time we return the favor. Thanks.
At this point in time, I'll open up for any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just clarify, you talked from the beginning, but who under the current law is excluded from the system? Because I know that last year, a couple senators put forth a bill to exclude people convicted of first-degree murder, but I don't think that bill ended up going anywhere. So are they currently excluded from it?
Yes, the only people that this bill would look at is individuals convicted of first-degree rape, sex offense. And remember, first degree is a crime of violence, meaning you're using some sort of violence to perpetrate the sexual act.
Do you have any indication how many people currently in the system that would apply to?
I think,
So we will have that from DPSCS in time for the hearing, but right now we have sentencing commission data, which is approximately 10 to 15 people are convicted in Maryland per year. So that is not the population presented in annual conviction of those two crimes.
Why is two crimes in particular and not a broader range?
Well, I think a lot of times it has to also look at the research and data in terms of who you can, in terms of recidivism and things like that. I think a lot of times, I know, Juliana, we were having a conversation in terms of the brains and what part of the brain can you try to change that type of behavior. When you look at the type of behavior that, in terms of almost the impulse control, in terms of actions in reference to the sex offenses, sometimes it's different than some other actions that you may have in some of the other violent crimes. We wanted to focus on this bill specifically because we're focused on Pava LaPere. And that's why this bill we are focused on.
Just as a follow-up, do you plan to introduce any other legislation, Delegate, that would sort of expand to other types of crimes as well?
This is the bill for this session that I'm focused on. I have other public safety bills. Thank you.
Mr. State's Attorney, you said that the delegate is introducing this legislation on behalf of your office. Some observers will say this is another example of your continued stance, your tough on crime stance. Speak to that point.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily always say that the tough on crime. I would say that, one of my roles is to make sure I protect any and everybody in the city. And I think this is just an extension. I'm not going to lie. This is a little different because of Frank, to be honest. I have a 7-year-old daughter. And I'll never forget talking to him, seeing him, and looking at his eyes well up. I thought about me being a father. I thought about how I would feel. And this one's a little different. It's a little more personal in that regard.
A follow-up question, please, for Mr. LaPere, if he's taking questions.
Sure.
Mr. LaPere, if you could step to the mic, sir, thank you. You touched on it a bit. What does this legislation, this proposed legislation, mean to you? It's in your daughter's name. What does it mean to you?
It means to me that no other family and no other father has to go through the loss that we've experienced that could have been avoided with a slight change in the legislation that has been in effect since 2016.
Are you leaving now with some sense of solace?
I'm leaving with a sense of hope, as I mentioned. Hope that good people, as I stated, can work together, who have vastly diverse backgrounds and philosophies to accomplish something that can help the mothers of the 2 people that were violently assaulted by this alleged person 2 days before he allegedly murdered my daughter. So I have hope. I don't have solace. This is just another step in our continued promotion of Pava and her legacy. Part of it is business related in our support for EcoMap and Techstars and the Baltimore tech ecosystem. And part of it is judicial, to make sure no one else has to experience what we did.
Mr. LaPere, can you talk to us about how the family is dealing and what's the healing process like for you?
We're doing. And we're all healing at our own pace. And reading a lot of books. We're all receiving counseling as necessary. And we're just taking one day at a time. We know it'll never be good, but we just hope it gets bearable. Thank you.
What do you think Pava would think about this?
Pava, as we know, with the group of people that she and Sherrod created to run EcoMap and throughout the tech community, always looked to help the disadvantaged. Her method to do so was to create entrepreneurial opportunities for people to grow themselves out of situations. And I think if this assists by continuing to push for what she stood for, then we can hopefully accomplish some good things.
I have a two-pronged question for either the state's attorney and the delegate or both. My first part of that is, do we have numbers, data indicating the extent to which this is a problem? Are there other cases that we know of where people convicted of first-degree sexual offenses have then been released on diminution credits and gone out to commit other violent crimes?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, this law, in terms of diminution credits, in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, they passed, was it 2016, when the legislature passed a law to say if you do this type of offense, a first-degree sex offense, to someone 16 years or younger, you no longer have diminution credits. Now, don't quote me, but from what I remember about that was this was an incident where an individual received diminution credits and is alleged to have done something to a young person, 16 years or younger. So that's at least one example. But I kind of look at it like this. One example, one time is one time too many. We want to make sure that we put laws in place that will keep all the citizens protected, and we don't want to go ahead and see it 3, 4, 5, 10 times. But we need to make sure if this law was in place, then we feel strongly that we would not have the victims in this case.
Thank you. And then the second part of my question is I spoke with advocates from the Sentencing Project this morning, and they expressed the concern that, this obviously an unspeakably horrific, unimaginable crime, but that perhaps this measure is, reactionary to one horrible, very rare situation, but that could then perpetuate more mass incarceration or reducing, increasing the time that people are incarcerated. Could you speak to that concern?
Yeah, I think Delegate Embry also spoke to it. Individuals still have the opportunity to receive parole. And so the parole commission is still there. So you're not closing those windows. But parole is going to be based on what you do, your body of work. Are you allowed? They're going to look at the background, they're going to look at the medical history, your interactions with doctors, therapists, and things like that. And so this way it's a lot different. It's more heavily monitored. So without a doubt, we never want to go back to mass incarceration, but we have to hold individuals accountable. We're focused here on individuals who perpetuate a violent criminal act in trying to receive some sort of sexual benefit. And so remember, first degree is violence and there's force involved. And that's the individual that we're looking at. And based on the research and the data, those individuals it's not really easy, if ever, to rehabilitate those individuals, those impulse control actions, individuals with sex offense who create those types of actions.
Bottom line, Mr. State's Attorney, how will legislation like this make a difference? What are you expecting to see?
We'll expect to see individuals convicted of first-degree sex offense. They will now no longer be allowed to use diminution credits as a way to leave the criminal justice system and the division of correction easier. What will happen now is they'll have to now be held accountable in another way. They will make sure that the Parole and Sentencing Commission, the Parole Commission, they're the ones who will look to see if this individual should be paroled early, or if not, then this individual will have to do the sentence that the court gave them and imposed upon them based on their violent criminal act.
Next question.
I think Juliana would like
I would like to comment as well on that. I feel like Pava would be very upset with me if I didn't. This this type of violent sexual crime disproportionately affects women. It affects women of Native American, African American, Hispanic, or Latina descent. People of color often are lower report rates of violent sexual crime. So those individuals and groups that are really focused on over-incarceration and over, being overly strict on crime, this bill is directly impacting those who are most impacted by violent sexual crime. And I think that is a crucial point to highlight here. And when you come to supporting those who are in that position, who are recipients on the other end impacted by violent sexual crime, when you're actually stepping in and creating action to protect them, you're not necessarily just protecting them, you're protecting our families, you're protecting our neighbors, you're protecting our community and our base level fundamental safety needs, so our economy, so our neighbors, our community can continue to grow and thrive. And I think that's a point that is inherently important here to point out. So thank you. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. I think one last question.
Sir, what about the fact that this violent offender was out in the public and the community didn't have any warning of his presence whatsoever? I know I've spoken to several law enforcement agents, retired, seasoned, and everything else, and it's always a matter of what the police decide, what they think the right decision is going to be. But in this case, it was the wrong decision, right?
Well, This is what I can say. It's very difficult sometimes. Hindsight's 20/20. I don't understand all the times what the police look at from their point of view. But as a state's attorney, I come and deal with the tail end. Unfortunately, by the time I get involved, the crime has already been perpetrated, and I have to go ahead and my office picks up the pieces. We try to work with the family, get the family support, but hold that alleged criminal perpetrator responsible. So,
Consider legislation or proposing new policy that would require the public to be informed when something of this severity happens, so that people would know that this person is walking away from the street?
like I said, I'm going to stay in my lane in the terms of criminal prosecution, but I'll let the mayor answer that question.
Yeah, man, thank you for that question. I think that when you're talking about something like this, and for me, this is, as you all know, something that's very personal because Pava was my friend. We have to also think about that when we're talking about hunting down these people, right? Even if, for example, a delegate were to put in a piece of legislation, oftentimes the folks that are hunting down these criminals actually don't work for the city of Baltimore or the state of Maryland. They're actually federal law enforcement officers who we have to know, and we respect the decisions that they make because sometimes, right, not often, I know the state's attorney can attest to this, when we're looking for a murderer or someone, the last thing that we want to do is tell them that we know we're looking for them because they'll go and run and hide. We have to make sure, and as I've instructed my police commissioner to do, that every time from this point on, when there's something like this, when someone like this is released and we know that they have been suspected to commit another crime, that the decision of whether we're going public should be made by him at his level with notification up the chain, not at a lower level, and we will continue to do that. But here in Maryland, we've had to in recent years even pass legislation for us as a local jurisdiction to get notified when these folks actually are released. So it's sometimes a lot harder than you think, because if someone who was on trial for murder or on trial for something gets released out, and the city of Baltimore for years was not even notified that those people were put back into the public, it's a lot harder for us to share that information out with the public. So we have put in some protocols on our end, but we know that it's very complicated when you're talking about different jurisdictional officers working different levels of government.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a long one. Sorry, Bonanno. B-U-O-N. B-U-O-N. Yeah. A-N-N-O. It's Goodyear in Italian.
Because their contact information on here for me, and I can send you whatever.
I did my research.
Get your information.